You're nothing without me, Jolene. His words sliced through me like glass shards, each syllable dripping with disdain. I gazed at Dalton's cold, expressionless face, searching desperately for any sign of the charming man I fell in love with 2 decades ago. But his steel blue eyes held no warmth, only a harsh reminder that the partnership I had built my life around was crumbling before me. I drew a sharp breath as the weight of his dismissal sank into my bones. After years of emotional manipulation, of walking on eggshells and making excuses for his lies, I was determined not to let him have the last word. "Get out," I said, my voice low but firm. Dalton cocked an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "You can't be serious, Jolene." "I mean it," I said. "I want you out of this house tonight." I held his glare, refusing to show weakness, though my hands trembled at my sides. Dalton let out a sharp laugh. "And where would I go? You really think you can just throw me out after everything I've done for you?" He took a menacing step toward me. "You owe me, Jolene. Everything you have is because of me." I flexed my fingers, digging my nails into my palms as I fought to restrain the fury bubbling inside me. He was right about one thing. Everything of material value I owned was because of him, because I had sacrificed my education, my dreams, my very identity to support Dalton's ambitions while he built his empire wheeling and dealing in real estate. I had worked tirelessly behind the scenes, hosting his clients, raising our son, managing his affairs, so Dalton was free to secure bigger deals and reap the fortunes. Only now, standing face to face in our lavish but coldly impersonal house, did I fully grasp how I had squandered decades enabling a man who clearly no longer valued me. "Get out," I repeated through gritted teeth, pointing at the hallway leading to the front door. "I'm done being your dutiful wife. If you won't leave tonight, I will." Dalton's smug expression faltered. He blinked hard before his mouth twisted into a snarl. "What has gotten into you?" He grabbed my shoulders, his fingers biting into my skin. "Is this about that country club receptionist? That little fling meant nothing to me. She was just a warm body when you were too busy or tired or whatever excuse you always have." His callous words sparked an image in my mind. The pretty blonde giggling on Dalton's lap last weekend, her fingers trailing along his chest. Nausea rose in my gut as the reality of his latest infidelity stared me in the face. I wrenched from his grasp, hot tears stinging my eyes. "Just go," I whispered. "Please, Grant deserves better than to have his final years tainted by the unraveling of his only son's marriage." At the mention of his ailing father, Dalton's face softened slightly. He studied me for a long moment before sighing loudly. "Fine, but we are far from over, Jolene," he warned. He brushed past me toward the bedroom, emerging minutes later with an overnight bag. He paused at the front door. "You really think you can make it out there without me?" He shook his head with a sneer. "Mark my words, you'll come crawling back." The door slammed shut behind him with an air of grim finality. I stood rigid, listening to the fading crunch of gravel as Dalton's sleek Mercedes disappeared into the night. In the deafening stillness, I became startlingly aware of my aloneness. I roamed from room to room, engulfed by the gnawing emptiness within me, which slowly solidified into a cold but unyielding determination. Dalton had underestimated me for the final time. Waking abruptly, I was momentarily disoriented by my unfamiliar surroundings. As consciousness settled in, the events of the previous night flooded back. Dalton's callous dismissal, our explosive argument, and his dramatic departure. Sitting up on the plush guest room sofa, where I had collapsed in the early hours, I was greeted by the first rays of dawn seeping through the tall windows, casting a mocking cheerfulness about the room. Swinging my legs over the side, I buried my head in my hands with a groan, grappling with the question of what to do next. My entire adult life had revolved around Dalton, supporting his career, raising our son, managing our social calendar and household affairs. Now, for the first time in decades, I was utterly alone. A wave of melancholy washed over me as I reminisced about simpler times, sharing secret smiles over the bakery counter with the charming business student who had tirelessly pursued me during my freshman year of college. Dalton had been enchanting in those early days, lavishing me with affectionate gestures and gifts. I was the pride of my small hometown when the most eligible bachelor chose me. When Dalton proposed just 8 months after we met, I stunned my family by dropping out of school to plan our whirlwind wedding. Caught up in the intoxicating rush of young love, I couldn't fathom denying Dalton anything. However, as Dalton's ambitions swelled, the sweet gestures gradually faded. He criticized my modest career aspirations, convincing me that staying home with future children was paramount. I buried my needs and independence to support his relentless climb up the corporate ladder. Somewhere along the way, amidst the demands of work, parenthood, and societal expectations, we ceased to be partners. Dalton's ego and self-interest consumed us both. Rising slowly from the couch, resigned to face this new and daunting phase of life alone, I began to gather my belongings. My gaze fell upon the antique desk in the corner of the room, another flashy sign of Dalton's growing wealth. On impulse, I pulled open the top drawer, where amidst the clutter of pens and rubber bands, my fingers brushed against a small, unfamiliar box, my heart racing. I retrieved the velvet case and unclasped it with trembling hands. Nestled inside was a gorgeous diamond tennis bracelet, glinting boldly in the morning light. Fresh anger coursed through me as I pictured Dalton fawning over one of his flings with this extravagant gift. It was yet another representation of his selfishness, lavishing treasures on his whims while I made do with the same jewelry he had given me decades ago. My bitterness swelled, usurping the grief that had threatened to overwhelm me. Dalton had smugly declared I couldn't survive without him, convinced I would never walk away from the comfortable life his wealth afforded. Staring down at the diamond bracelet, a bold idea took shape. Dalton wasn't the only one who could play dirty. If he wanted to underestimate me, I would show him just how cunning I could be. Snapping the box closed, I tucked it into my bag with renewed resolve. I had calls to make: an overpriced divorce lawyer, a savvy real estate agent, perhaps even a private investigator. I refused to emerge from this marriage broken and destitute, simply because Dalton assumed that was my only option. For the first time in years, I felt fully in control of my choices. Come what may, I would land on my feet, and karma willing, I would bring Dalton to his knees in the process. My heels clicked purposefully across the marble foyer as I returned home from my legal consultation, echoes underscoring my determination. The conversation replayed in my mind. With no prenuptial agreement in place, you have considerable leverage in the divorce settlement, my cutthroat lawyer had said, especially given the length of the marriage and assets involved. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile as I set my bag down on the kitchen island, the weight of the unknown tennis bracelet still tucked inside serving as a tangible reminder of Dalton's deception. My plotting was interrupted by footsteps and a shocked gasp behind me. I spun around to find Lucia, our housekeeper, clutching her chest in the kitchen doorway. "Mrs. Harris, you gave me such a fright. I did not expect anyone else to be home," she explained. Lucia had worked for our family for over a decade, her warm and non-judgmental presence a rare constant in recent years. "I'm so sorry, Lucia," I replied. "It's been a difficult couple of days around here, as I'm sure you know." Lucia nodded, her eyes gentle and understanding. "I cannot believe Mr. Harris would do this to you. You have been so good to him through all these years," she said. I sighed, the truth of her words hitting painfully close to home. All those years compromising my needs and dreams to support Dalton's ambitions. What did I have to show for it now? Just yesterday, it seemed I had lost everything. Yet Lucia's compassion and my lawyer's assurances were kindling a small but growing fire inside, steeling me for the fight ahead. "Thank you, Lucia," I said. "Your support means so much to me right now. I wasn't sure I could get through this, but I'm starting to realize. I discovered that I'm a lot stronger than Dalton ever gave me credit for." Just then, the faint sound of the front gate opening drew our attention. Moments later, Dalton strolled casually into the kitchen. Lucia and I stared at him incredulously. "Jolene, there you are." I swung by the office and had a chat with my father, Dalton said breezily. as if nothing were amiss. He convinced me we need to figure this thing out, not toss away 22 years just because you're going through some hormonal mood swing. He glanced at Lucia. Would you mind giving us a few minutes? I stood frozen as Lucia nodded and slipped quietly from the room. Dalton turned to me, his expression softening. Come now, Joe. I know things got a little heated the other night. He reached for my hand. We're under a lot of pressure. What with father's illness, Alex graduating, and work being more demanding than ever. When I still didn't respond, he gently grabbed my shoulders. I forgive you for your little outburst, all right? Why don't we take a weekend trip to the vineyard? Just the two of us, reconnect, and hit the reset button. My blood boiled at his audacity to waltz back in here expecting reconciliation after everything he had put me through. I wrenched from his grasp, my voice dripping with venom. You arrogant bastard, get out before I have you thrown out. Dalton blinked in surprise. Jolene, please, just listen, he began, but I cut him off. No, you listen. I saw the bracelet, Dalton. His face paled. Our marriage is over. So be yourself a favor and leave with whatever shred of dignity you have left. Instead of making this uglier than it needs to be, Dalton's shell-shocked expression shifted to cold rage. He stepped forward, jabbing his finger toward me as he spat his reply. You'll regret this, Jolene. I promise you that. I awoke the next morning feeling truly rested for the first time in recent memory. Dalton's latest attempt to manipulate me had only affirmed I was on the right path. I stretched lazily, surprised to realize I had slept through the night without aid of my usual sleeping pills. Throwing back the covers, I headed for the shower with fresh resolve, the conversation with my lawyer replaying in my mind. Document everything from this point forward. Every financial record you can get your hands on, any evidence of affairs. It will only strengthen your position. By the time I finished blow-drying my hair, I was brimming with purpose. I quickly dressed and headed straight for Dalton's home office. If he thought he could intimidate me into staying with veiled threats, he had another thing coming. I took control of my future as I rifled through Dalton's meticulously organized drawers and files, my hands expertly guiding me to the most relevant documents. Bank statements, investment reports, loan applications. I assembled anything that provided transparency into our financial lives, anything I could leverage to ensure I emerged from this divorce securely on my own 2 feet. Nearly 2 hours passed in a blur before I heard movements elsewhere in the house. I scrambled to return the home office to its original pristine condition just as Lucia appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Harris, pardon the interruption, but your lawyer is on the phone, she said tentatively. My heart leaped with renewed motivation. Snatching up my stuffed briefcase, I squeezed Lucia's shoulder appreciatively as I hurried past. Lou, you're a gem. Wish me luck, I called over my shoulder. Safely sequestered in my makeshift bedroom suite, I eagerly accepted the call. My lawyer's smooth voice greeted me on the other end of the line. Jolene, I have an update. My investigator uncovered something rather interesting. What followed was perhaps the final missing piece of the puzzle. In addition to evidence corroborating Dalton's long-term affair with his assistant, my lawyer had discovered questionable activity around my husband's latest real estate project. It appears Dalton and his business partner may be intentionally devaluing the property on paper while projecting high future returns to investors, he explained. It's not definitive fraud yet, but it's ethically questionable at minimum. I shook my head in disgust as I realized I had only scratched the surface of Dalton's deceit. After profusely thanking my lawyer for the update, I hung up the phone feeling more empowered than ever. I now held the keys for my liberation from Dalton's toxic web in every sense, emotionally, financially, socially. Emboldened by this newfound evidence, I found myself actually hoping Dalton would try confronting me again. I would relish seeing the smug smile wiped clean off his face when he realized I now held all the cards. The fantasy faded as unwelcome sadness momentarily softened my resolve. Somewhere under the arrogance and duplicity lurked the man who had once made me feel cherished. I said a silent goodbye to that Dalton, the one who existed before success corrupted him completely. With peace in my heart, I tucked away the memory of him for good, along with any lingering doubts about my path forward. This was my life now, and I refused to let anyone control my fate ever again. I stared in disbelief at the documents spread across the desk before me. Financial statements, private emails, company memos, all pointing to the same devastating truth. Dalton had lied. My husband was facing bankruptcy and hadn't bothered to give me even the slightest warning. I sank back in the leather desk chair, my heart pounding as the reality of my predicament sunk in. All those years sacrificing for Dalton's ambitions, and now there was apparently nothing left to show for it. Even the lavish house I sat in was headed for foreclosure. Hot tears stung my eyes. How could I have been so stupid and naive? Of course, Dalton would find new ways to deceive me right up until the bitter end. My sadness quickly hardened into rage as I considered how easily Dalton could have hidden assets or squirreled away funds, anticipating our divorce. I rifled through the papers again, seeking clues, but found nothing concrete. My phone buzzed loudly, jolting me from my frantic research. I glanced at the caller ID, my lawyer. Taking a deep breath to steady my voice, I answered. "Jolene, I'm so sorry about this news," came the somber greeting. "Dalton has kept his financial struggles painfully quiet, it seems, but there may still be options." "Don't apologize," I interjected firmly. "You've given me a gift with the truth. No matter what Dalton tries now, he can't manipulate me anymore." I meant every word with clarity, with conviction. I refused to cower and panic in reaction to Dalton's lies. Not this time. After discussing strategy with my lawyer, renewed courage and conviction propelled me upwards. I gathered my paperwork, adjusted my dress, and strode purposely from the empty house without a backward glance. I arrived unannounced at Dalton's sleek downtown office. His receptionist gawked as I flew past her desk and barged straight through the imposing double doors. "Jolene, what are you?" Dalton sputtered, rising from behind his glass and steel executive desk. Before he could react further, I slapped down the stack of financial documents in front of him. "Game over, Dalton. I know everything," I announced. His confident expression wavered slightly. I pressed my momentary advantage. "I'll be filing for divorce tomorrow. Given your situation, I expect you to be reasonable in the settlement." Dalton opened his mouth to protest, but I silenced him with one final blow. "And if you fight me, I won't hesitate to share every sordid detail with the board, your investors, our entire social circle." My voice rang with conviction. "My lawyer seems confident that exposing your dirty laundry would rather undermine your attempts to save face and salvage your precious reputation, bankruptcy notwithstanding." Dalton Pidd sinking slowly back into his seat in tacit acceptance. His eyes narrowed, but his voice held a note of defeat when he finally replied, "You don't have to threaten me, Jolene. Despite what you may think, I have no intention of leaving you destitute." I nodded curtly, maintaining my defensive facade despite the tempest of emotion swirling inside me. I turned on my heels without another word, refusing to let Dalton see me crumble yet again. Safely outside, I sucked in ragged gulps of air, willing my thundering heart to quiet and the sting of tears to abate. So this was it, the demise of the future. I had staked everything on straightening my back. I began the long walk back to grab my things from the house I could no longer call home. Yet amidst the uncertainty now before me, each step fueled a growing flicker of hope inside my heart. I was finally taking back control of my life, and God help anyone who tried to stand in my way. I took a deep, steadying breath as I prepared to sign the final divorce decree. After weeks of tense negotiations, we had finally reached an agreement. I would retain ownership of our main residence and receive a sizable portion of marital assets. Dalton would keep his summer beach house and the remaining investments. "Just sign the damn thing so we can end this charade of a marriage once and for all," Dalton grumbled, shoving the paperwork toward me. I picked up my pen, hesitating even now. Parting ways with Dalton for good unleashed a swirling vortex of emotions I thought I had neatly compartmentalized. Sensing my reluctance, Dalton seized the opportunity to twist the knife one final time. Having second thoughts about throwing away your cushy future as Mrs. Dalton Harris? Not so easy to give up the private jets and beachside villas for a life of mediocrity, is it? His smug expression fueled my mounting anger, vanquishing any last shred of sadness. I met his contemptuous gaze head on. Quite the contrary, Dalton, I replied evenly. I discovered recently that I have assets of my own. His eyes narrowed at my cryptic response. I continued, remember that lakeside property I inherited from my grandmother years ago? The one you insisted I sell right away so you could fund your newest development. Dalton shifted uncomfortably at the long-forgotten memory. After ignoring his demands to liquidate the modest land asset, I had tucked away the property deed, retaining my small connection to family history. Well, it turns out that land is now prime real estate worth nearly $2 million, I revealed casually. So you see, I'll manage just fine on my own. Dalton's face morphed from confusion to disbelief to outrage in quick succession. He sputtered indignantly, "What? You can't prove." "No matter." I cut off his rambling threats with a wave of my hand. "Don't waste your time or money, Dalton. The property is solely in my name. But by all means, take me to court if you need yet another public humiliation." I signed the divorce decree with flourish and pushed it back across the table, relishing this final victory. For a brief moment, I allowed smug satisfaction to replace the swirling emotions I had bottled up for too long. I stood calmly, gathering my belongings while Dalton stared at me wildly, the new reality settling over him. "Well, if we're quite finished here, gentlemen, I'll be on my way." I nodded graciously at our lawyers before turning my gaze back to Dalton. "I do hope you find some shred of human decency left in that dark heart of yours, for your sake at least, if not anyone else's." With those final words, I walked steadily from the room, only allowing myself to tremble with release once outside the oppressive atmosphere. I leaned against the cool brick wall, taking deep, healing breaths. The time had come to close this painful chapter for good and step wholly into a future of my own making. While Dalton grappled with his bitter comeuppance, I felt only lightness and liberty. Tomorrow would mark the first sunrise of a life no longer confined by secrets, manipulation, or the suffocation of stunted dreams. Against all odds, I had salvaged my sense of self from the ruins of betrayal, and nothing could dampen my spirit now. I heaved a satisfied sigh, admiring my surroundings. The blank walls and bare floors held only possibility, a far cry from the cold opulence of the home. The past few months had flown by in a flurry of fresh starts, new ventures, and overdue reckonings. The sale of my inherited lakefront property had left me with newfound financial independence. After the divorce, Dalton descended swiftly into disgrace as details of his shady business dealings came to light. Meanwhile, I embraced solitude and reveled in personal growth. Now, on the eve before opening day of my very own bakery, I paused to reflect on the circuitous route that had delivered me here. Failures often plant the seeds of later success, I mused, and what felt like loss and devastation ultimately cleared the way for truer fulfillment. My philosophical rumination ended abruptly with Lucia's signature cheerful greeting. "It smells heavenly in here already," she remarked. My longtime friend and confidant had left Dalton's employment to join me in this new endeavor. Her steadfast support through all my tribulations had been a rare gift. We spent the afternoon preparing a test batch of goodies showcasing my decadent family recipes. Tomorrow, these polished granite countertops would display baskets brimming with flaky croissants, glossy fruit tarts, and artisan breads. As we worked, laughing easily together, my phone buzzed loudly in my pocket. I dusted the flour from my hands before glancing at the caller ID, an international number I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of me. "Hello, Jolene Harris speaking." I answered briskly, prepared to terminate yet another sales solicitation. But the smooth, familiar voice I heard instead jolted me completely. "Jolene, it's Dalton." "I'm sorry for the out-of-the-blue call," he said, sounding uncharacteristically hesitant and deflated. Curiosity rooted me in place. I just heard about your new bakery on social media. Congratulations. His voice trailed off awkwardly. Anyway, the reason I'm calling. I know my apology likely means nothing at this point, but I wanted to express my sincere regret for how everything unfolded. I stood frozen in stunned silence, trying to process Dalton's words as he continued haltingly. Leaving you and losing the publicity battle afterwards, it finally knocked some sense into me. I discovered who my true supporters were. Lucia and I exchanged stunned looks. Was Dalton Harris actually demonstrating humility? When I still didn't respond, Dalton pressed on. I ended up relocating abroad to escape the drama and scrutiny. I have an opportunity to start fresh here, but before I did, I needed to make amends, to let you know how much I respect and admire you for landing on your feet. You didn't deserve how I treated you. I cleared my throat, regathering my wits after Dalton's emotional appeal. I appreciate you saying all of that, Dalton. I can't erase the pain you caused, but healing comes from moving forward with wisdom and grace. We exchanged a few more awkward pleasantries before hanging up. As I slowly set down the phone, Lucia appeared by my side, concern crinkling her warm eyes. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked. Considering the question, I took full stock of my emotional state. To my pleasant surprise, instead of the usual hurt and frustration Dalton's presence evoked, I felt only forgiveness and peace. His mistakes were no longer mine to carry. Meeting Lucia's caring gaze, I gave her a genuine smile. "Actually, yes, I'm more than all right. For the first time in ages, I feel completely free," I said. She squeezed my hand supportively, a look of pride and joy lighting her face. Together, we turned our focus back to preparing for tomorrow's grand opening. With clarity and purpose, I stepped wholly into the life and dreams I had deferred for too long.
"I told you I don't like this food," I said, my frustration clear. "You're harassing me by making things I don't enjoy, aren't you?" I added, feeling overwhelmed. "But your husband likes it," she replied dismissively. "Just cook something else right now," I insisted, my patience wearing thin. I had reached my breaking point. The constant yelling and screaming from my mother-in-law when she didn't like something had become unbearable. I wasn't sure if I could handle her sarcasm and criticism for the rest of my life. I had resigned myself to enduring her bullying, but then something happened that changed everything. My name is Ellen. My husband George and I have been married for 3 years, and we were living with my parents at their house. George, often away on business trips, was currently gone, and though I used to feel uneasy without him, had become so busy that I barely noticed his absence. My days were packed from dawn until dusk. I would wake up early to prepare a meal for my father-in-law, who rose with the sun. While he ate, I would clean the house and do the laundry. After he finished, I'd immediately clean up the dishes. Once the household chores were done, I'd rush to my part-time job. When I got home at 5 p.m., I'd cook dinner again, clean the house, and do laundry one more time. By the end of the day, I was exhausted. But the most draining part of my life was the constant bullying from my mother-in-law. Although she didn't work and spent all her time at home, she did no housework. My husband once told me he couldn't even remember what his mother's cooking tasted like, indicating she hadn't done much housework when he was growing up. Despite her inactivity, my mother-in-law had a knack for criticizing everything I did. She was meticulous about the food I prepared and always found fault with the cleanliness of the house. It felt like her hobby to belittle me. Known in the neighborhood as a show-off, she would parade around in ill-fitting jewelry, and though the neighbors would compliment her, they didn't genuinely think she looked good. They were hesitant to upset her, perhaps out of respect for my father-in-law, who was well-liked and involved in the community. He had been an executive at a prominent local company and was still connected with many people from his professional life. Though my father-in-law never imposed his will, my mother-in-law's overbearing nature was often overlooked by the neighbors, who chose not to confront her. Feeling isolated, I had no one to turn to in the neighborhood. However, when my father-in-law fell ill, and was diagnosed with advanced cancer, my world shifted. I was grateful for him, who was the complete opposite of my mother-in-law. Despite his illness, his kindness and genuine concern for me stood out starkly against the backdrop of my mother-in-law's cruelty. I knew that our financial stability was largely thanks to my father-in-law's past contributions. To show my gratitude, I tried to take care of him as best as I could. I made sure to keep him engaged with conversations, played cards with him, and prepared easy-to-eat meals to ensure he received the nutrition he needed. He was always appreciative and often expressed his thanks. "Thank you," he would say. "I'm so happy every day because of you." No, I would respond. "I'm just doing what I can." "I'm sorry for the burden my wife has put on you," he would continue. "She doesn't do much around the house." It was clear that my father-in-law was concerned about my mother-in-law's lack of effort. His gentle nature made it hard for him to address her shortcomings directly. Still, it was comforting to know he understood how poorly she treated me. "I'm sorry for leaving everything to you, Ellen," he said. "My wife should be doing a better job. You don't have to force yourself to take care of me." "Please don't say that," I reassured him. "I just want to repay you for everything you've done for me." His eyes welled up with tears as he held my hand and said, "Thank you." But then everything changed. My father-in-law's condition suddenly deteriorated, and he was rushed to the hospital in an emergency. When the ambulance arrived, he was already in a coma. The doctors informed us that his prognosis was uncertain and that we needed to prepare ourselves for the worst. The sudden turn of events left me in a state of panic, struggling to process the gravity of the situation. I couldn't stop crying when I saw my father-in-law, his face etched with pain. I felt a pang of sympathy for my mother-in-law, believing she must be deeply distressed. Asked her how she was coping. However, her response was chillingly unexpected. "I'm sure he'll never recover from this, but at least his inheritance will be enough," she said, her words cold and calculating. Her callousness enraged me. Meanwhile, my father-in-law remained unconscious, though his breathing was steady. I visited him daily, speaking to him as much as I could, hoping that somehow my words might reach him and prompt a response. Yet he showed no signs of waking. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, never came to see him. When I encouraged her to visit, she would respond dismissively. "Don't tell me what to do. I'm too busy every day. Spending time at the hospital is a waste." Whenever I tried to persuade her, she would lash out with harsh comments. She even had the audacity to instruct me, "Hey Ellen, you're bringing clean clothes for him every day, right? Just pretend I did it. Don't make the mistake of saying you did." Her intention was clear. She wanted to appear benevolent while avoiding any actual responsibility. "He'll never wake up, and his inheritance will be mine," she declared. "Don't talk nonsense to people about it." It was evident that my mother-in-law's sole concern was the inheritance, revealing just how little she cared about my father-in-law's well-being. I was so infuriated by my mother-in-law's selfishness that I decided I had to take action. With my father-in-law no longer at home, her bullying had intensified. "Why aren't you starting dinner yet? It's too early for that," she snapped. "I'm heading to the hospital now and will be back soon to cook." "You really piss me off, Ellen," she continued. "I've told you countless times that the old man is only good for leaving me his money. He doesn't need visits or sympathy." Her harsh words about my father-in-law were too much to bear. I wanted to retort but managed to keep my composure. Then I received a call from the hospital with the news I had been hoping for. "Is it true?" asked, heart racing. Thank God. My father-in-law had finally emerged from his coma, and remarkably, his condition had stabilized. I rushed to the hospital with my mother-in-law. As we entered his room, I greeted him warmly. "Welcome back. It's so good to see you." He responded, "Me too. I'm sorry for all the trouble." My father-in-law smiled peacefully at me. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, put on an act of joy and said, Honey, I've been taking care of you every day. I see, he replied, noting that his clothes were clean. You did all this for me? Yes, I did everything, she said, looking at me expectantly, as if she wanted me to agree with her performance. Ignored her silent cues and let her leave. It was clear from her expression that she was frustrated with me for not playing along. My father-in-law noticed her irritation, but chose not to comment. Well, I'm going to go now, my mother-in-law said, her mood sour. I have some errands to run, so please take care of things here, Ellen. She cast one last annoyed glance at my father-in-law before leaving the room. Are you okay, Ellen? He asked, noticing the tension. Why do you ask? I responded, puzzled. My wife's attitude seemed strange, he said. I thought it was you who took care of me all this time. I realized that he had seen through the pretense. Had been keeping evidence of my mother-in-law's actions, planning to share it when the time was right. I hadn't expected to reveal it so soon. Well, I'm sorry if this disturbs you, I said, pulling out my voice recorder. But please listen to this. I played the recording for him, feeling a mix of guilt and relief as he heard my mother-in-law's true voice. I knew my father-in-law would find it painful to hear everything my mother-in-law had said on the recording. Her words were filled with malice and greed. When my husband dies, I want all the inheritance for myself. I want him to die soon. I don't want to take care of him. It's a waste of time. As I looked at my father-in-law with concern, I was surprised to see him laughing. She's turned into such a greedy woman, hasn't she? He said with a chuckle. I wouldn't give any of my inheritance to someone like that. Despite his laughter, I could sense his deep anger and hurt. A few days later, my father-in-law's condition stabilized, and he was discharged from the hospital. Once home, my mother-in-law made a point of telling him how difficult it had been to care for him every day. My father-in-law listened in silence, not disputing her complaints. Shortly after, my husband returned from his business trip to visit his father. I'm sorry I'm late, he said as he arrived. But it's good to see you're doing okay. Yes, I'm fine, my father-in-law replied. Thanks to you and Ellen for looking out for me. I'm really glad you're here. My father-in-law seemed genuinely grateful for our support. From then on, my husband and I continued to care for him. Although he made some progress, his health remained fragile. I could see my father-in-law growing weaker each day. The reality of his approaching farewell was becoming clear. My husband and I made a pact to do our utmost for him until we had to say goodbye. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law remained unchanged. She continued to neglect my father-in-law's care, spending her time away from home. It seemed she believed that with my husband's return, she could relax and let us handle everything. The fact that both my father-in-law and husband were home made it harder for her to assert her dominance over me. As my father-in-law's condition deteriorated, he ate less and less. In his final moments, he managed to whisper his last words to us. Thank you both so much. I've left a will for you to read after I'm gone. I appreciate your care until the end. With those words, his life came to an end. At his funeral, I was deeply moved by the sheer number of people who came to pay their respects. It was clear that my father-in-law had been greatly respected at work and cherished by many. In contrast, my mother-in-law seemed unnervingly lively. She acted as though she was the one who had brought everyone together, and even boasted about taking care of him until the very end. Her lack of tears and her disingenuous display of grief were unsettling. I wanted to confront her about her behavior in front of the attendees, but I refrained from causing a scene at my father-in-law's grave. The funeral went smoothly, and I was relieved that my father-in-law could rest in peace. However, when we returned home, I noticed a drastic shift in my mother-in-law's attitude. My mother-in-law's attitude changed drastically after the funeral. She was visibly exhausted and spoke with a mix of relief and satisfaction. I'm so tired. Funerals are always so depressing, she said. But now that I have the inheritance, I can look forward to the rest of my life. It was clear she believed that all of my father-in-law's inheritance was rightfully hers. She seemed in high spirits, making plans for her newfound wealth. That's when my husband presented her with the will. "I'm sorry to change the mood," he said, "but Dad left this will before he passed. I haven't read it yet, but I think it has something to do with the inheritance." "Don't need to see the will. It's all mine," she replied confidently. "Let's just sit down and read it," my husband suggested, trying to calm the situation. When my husband carefully opened the will, my mother-in-law grabbed the paper roughly and began to read. Her expression shifted from confidence to shock as she read the contents. "What? What is this?" she stammered, her face going pale. I took the will from her trembling hands and read it myself. It stated that I was to inherit everything my father-in-law had. It also mentioned that the inheritance was to be used by both me and George as a couple, acknowledging my care for him, while my husband was away. This made perfect sense. My father-in-law's gratitude was evident in his will. "But all of it," my mother-in-law protested, her voice rising in outrage. "This isn't right. How can two strangers get everything?" She accused me of forging the will and made vicious remarks, calling me names and claiming that I must have manipulated my father-in-law. "Hey Mom, stop," my husband finally said, his anger rising. "You've never taken care of Dad. Ellen did. That's why he was so grateful to her." My mother-in-law, now hysterical, began to cry uncontrollably. "Please, please, at least leave me the house." I felt a pang of sympathy for my mother-in-law, knowing how hard it must be to lose the home she had lived in for so long. To ease her distress, I decided to offer her a small portion of my inheritance. "You can keep the house," I said, looking her directly in the eyes. "I understand you're struggling financially, so I'll give you some money as well. But please, don't act like you did before. We're moving out and you'll need to manage on your own." Her reaction shifted dramatically once she learned she would be receiving both the house and some money. "Oh, thank God. I was afraid I'd lose the house too," she exclaimed, her mood lightening. "If you're leaving, then get out already." With that, she returned to her old, unpleasant self. I was frustrated by how easily I had been manipulated by her false tears, but the thought of no longer living with her outweighed my irritation over the portion of the inheritance I was giving away. A week later, we began our move. We planned to temporarily live in an apartment while searching for a suitable location to build a new house. Thanks to the inheritance from my father-in-law, we would be able to construct a beautiful home. I also wanted to build a small altar in his honor to show my gratitude. I was thrilled at the prospect of a new chapter free from the constant scrutiny of my mother-in-law. On the other hand, she struggled to adjust to her new circumstances. Despite losing her primary residence, she continued her lavish spending habits, living beyond her means. As word of our departure spread, the neighborhood's attitude toward my mother-in-law shifted. The neighbors, once wary of her, began spreading rumors, further isolating her. Her extravagant lifestyle eventually depleted her savings and pension. She had to sell the house she had fought so hard to keep, and now, with no home or job, her current situation is unknown to me. As far as I'm concerned, she is no longer my concern. I have no interest in where she goes or what she does from now on. I was caught off guard when I found out you weren't staying with us. I didn't make a reservation for you, and my mind went blank with frustration. We're on a family vacation that I never even wanted to go on in the first place, and now we're at a fancy hotel. My husband pretends not to notice the tension and walks away. "We'll see you at checkout, Emily," he says as he heads into the luxurious hotel with everyone else, leaving me behind. My name is Emily, and I just turned 30 this year. I'm a stay-at-home mom living with my husband, Spencer, my mother-in-law, Kate, and our son, Sean, who is now 3. Spencer and I met on a blind date 7 years ago, and married shortly after. Our life together has been ordinary and free of major conflicts, and we're known among the neighbors as a loving couple. 2 years after we married, we had seen. Spencer was busy with work but was always actively involved in childcare. I had no complaints about him, and life was manageable. However, things began to change after Scene was born. 6 months ago, my father-in-law passed away, and Kate was set to move in with us. The last time I saw her, other than at our wedding, was when Spencer and I visited her to announce our engagement. It had been quite some time, and my first impression of her hadn't been positive. My father-in-law, on the other hand, was always kind to me and left me with a good impression. I remember his concerns about whether I was the right choice for Spencer and his worries that I might cause him trouble. His bluntness about these concerns stung, and although Spencer worked hard to win her approval, Kate's disapproving looks were hard to ignore. We eventually managed to get her approval with some persuasion, but I still resent how openly critical she was in front of me. When Kate and her belongings finally arrived at our house, I was determined to stay positive and do my best to get along with her. I helped her unpack and was relieved to see she was kind to Scene. Spencer and I divided the tasks. He handled the heavy items while I took care of the smaller things. Unpacking went smoothly, until a minor issue arose. "This is supposed to go over here," Kate commented, referring to a fake plant I had placed to brighten up the room. Although I was annoyed by her criticism, I moved the plant to where she wanted it. She then spent some time watching TV and didn't offer any help with the unpacking. I was busy managing Scene and finishing up the packing, but couldn't ask Spencer, who was resting after handling the heavy lifting, for help. I ended up finishing the task with mixed emotions, feeling the strain of trying to keep the peace. Tried to convince myself that Kate was just struggling with the change in her living situation and pushed aside my frustration towards her. However, her criticism persisted daily. One morning, after waking up early to prepare breakfast for everyone, I attempted to take a break. But Kate's voice cut through the quiet. "If you have time to rest, you should be cleaning up the house." She never gave me a moment's peace, constantly criticizing how I did things. Meanwhile, she was rarely home during the day and never seemed to lift a finger herself. The constant strain was wearing me down, so I decided to talk to Spencer about her behavior. "She must be having a hard time adjusting," I said, hoping for some support. But despite knowing how she treated me, Spencer didn't intervene. I would lay in bed each night, my hands on my forehead, overwhelmed and unable to sleep. No matter how I felt, my 3-year-old son would cry at night from the exhaustion. I struggled to get out of bed to comfort him, and Kate, disturbed by the noise, would shake me awake, scolding me for not attending to him sooner. "How can you still be sleeping when your son is crying? It's your job to take care of him," she would yell, berating me for my fatigue and inability to keep up. I didn't want to escalate things, so I quietly got up, but the stress left me with no sleep that night. When Spencer was off work the next day, I planned to cook lunch. Kate, however, had already started preparing the meal. When she placed the food on the table, one plate was noticeably missing. "Looks like one plate is missing," Kate said. "I made it for Spencer, who works hard, and for my grandson. There's none for you. Make your own." I was stunned and hurt. It became glaringly clear that Kate's behavior was more than just criticism. It was deliberate mistreatment. I had been trying to ignore it for a while, but it was impossible to overlook any longer. I struggled to tolerate Kate's behavior, trying to convince myself that she was just being tough on me to make me a better wife. If I didn't keep thinking this way, I would have crumbled under the pressure. Unable to voice my frustrations to Kate directly, I confided in a friend after dropping Scene off at daycare. "That's definitely bullying. How are you holding up?" she asked, genuinely concerned. I detailed everything to my childhood best friend, who listened with empathy. Her concern and support overwhelmed me, and I finally broke down in tears. I had been battling my frustrations alone for too long. She reassured me that I was doing my best and that things would get better. "I'll help you. We'll figure something out," she promised. Although our conversation was brief because we both had commitments, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. My friend suggested a couple of things. One idea was to use a recording device to capture what was being said in the house. On my way to pick up Scene, I bought a cheap recorder. When I got home, I found Kate out as usual and took the opportunity to set up the recorder discreetly. While cleaning, I noticed a piece of paper that had fallen from a drawer in Kate's room. When I picked it up and unfolded it, I discovered it was a personal loan agreement for $20,000. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. But I decided it might be useful and tucked the paper into my pocket. After a while, Kate returned, and soon Spencer came home just in time for dinner. As we sat around the table, Kate began her usual complaints. Then out of the blue she mentioned, "By the way, my friend gave me a discount coupon for a one-night stay at a 5-star spa hotel." Her mention of the coupon seemed like a hint that she wanted to go. Spencer was enthusiastic about the idea, and even Scene seemed excited. I, on the other hand, wasn't thrilled and braced myself for what I anticipated would be an unpleasant experience. "Well, since you're here and you work so hard, you might as well join us," Kate said. I was taken aback. Hearing such an offer from someone who had been so critical of me was astonishing. Part of me wondered if she meant well, though I struggled to believe her offer wasn't made with some ulterior motive. She wanted to book everything for the next day. That night, I couldn't sleep, trying to decide what to do. By morning, I was still conflicted. I sat for a long time, pondering the trip. Scene wanted to go, but since Mom wouldn't be able to watch him, and it would be difficult to take him with me alone. Needed Spencer's help. "You don't support me when your mother mistreats me." "I don't want to go," I said. Spencer was at a loss for words. He knew I was right and was caught between wanting to please his mother and addressing my concerns. He pleaded with me to reconsider, so I decided to set a condition. "Fine, but first, take a look at this," I said, showing him the loan agreement I had found in Kate's room. Spencer's face went pale as he read the document, revealing Kate's $20,000 debt. He was shocked and couldn't believe his mother was in such financial trouble. "Can we help her pay this off? As her son, I can't just ignore it," he asked, knowing that I was responsible for managing our finances. "Of course," I replied, understanding the complexity of the situation. I declined Kate's offer. I had no intention of helping someone who had treated me poorly. I understood Spencer's feelings as a son, but I couldn't agree to support Kate under those circumstances. I told Spencer, "I will help you with this trip, but only if you agree to my conditions." The first condition was that Spencer must intervene whenever Kate mistreated or overly criticized me. The second was that I would establish some ground rules for Kate, write them down, and post them around the house. If Kate couldn't agree to these conditions, we would have to ask her to leave. Spencer agreed to these terms, and we decided to implement them after the trip. I asked my friend to post the rules while we were away. We would continue to act normally until the trip was over, and then we'd put our plan into action. Spencer agreed, and I decided to go on the trip with them. The next day, I informed Kate that I would be joining them. I kept reminding myself to be patient just a little longer. On the day of the trip, Spencer handled everyone's bags as we prepared to leave the house. Kate's bullying began immediately. "You don't need to carry the bags. Let Emily do it," she said. Spencer glanced at me apologetically, and I complied, believing it was better to avoid conflict. However, the bags were extremely heavy, and managing them while taking care of Scene left me exhausted. The journey involved taking an Amtrak train followed by a drive over a mountain road to the hotel. The exterior and interior of the hotel were stunningly luxurious. Scene was thrilled, exploring every corner, while Kate admired the decor and checked us in at the front desk. As I grabbed my bag and prepared to head to our room, Kate's next words took me by surprise. "Were you planning to stay with us?" "I only made a reservation for the 3 of us." I was stunned and speechless. it became clear that Kate had invited me on this trip solely to serve as a porter and never intended for me to stay. Gradually, the reality of the situation sunk in. I asked Kate, "Then where should I sleep?" Her response was dismissive. "I don't know and I don't care. Why don't you just camp out in the woods?" I was taken aback. She had invited me on this trip only to suggest that I sleep outside. I was seething with anger and I almost shouted at her, but she and my family had already disappeared down the hallway. "I'll see you at checkout time," Kate called back over her shoulder. Left standing alone in the lobby, I felt a mix of frustration and disbelief. I had suspected there was a catch, but being forced to camp out was beyond what I had imagined. Tears welled up in my eyes as I made my way out of the hotel. Spencer sent a brief message saying, "I'm sorry." I was too hurt and angry to respond. After noon, I found a cafe for lunch and later stumbled upon an open field where I could see the sunset. Just as I settled in, my friend called, "Hey, how's the trip going?" "But you asked." I had given her a duplicate key and informed her of the situation beforehand. She was furious and offered to come pick me up, but I declined. I appreciated her offer, but I knew leaving now would mean Kate getting exactly what she wanted. Unsure of what Kate might do next, I decided to consult a lawyer. I sent him the evidence of the mistreatment, preparing to pursue a case for emotional abuse. If it turned out that Kate's actions were premeditated, she would be asked to leave after the trip. I couldn't find a legal claim, but I had solid evidence that should have supported my case. The lawyer assured me that I had grounds to proceed if I chose to. After the call, the mental and physical exhaustion hit me hard, and I collapsed onto the fresh grass. I spent the night in an open field with a stunning view and a cool breeze, feeling both the beauty and the weight of the situation. The next morning, I met up with Kate and my family just in time for checkout. "Emily, did you actually sleep in the woods? I bet you didn't even clean up. You're so filthy," Kate sneered. Spencer tried to intervene, but Kate quickly shifted the topic. It was clear he had mentioned that pushing me out was excessive. Kate gushed about how nice the hotel had been, but Scene's smile was my only comfort as we headed home. Once we arrived, Kate immediately began to yell, "What's all this? Don't mess with me." Rules were posted all over the house, and it was evident she had seen them as her face flushed with anger. When Spencer showed her the IO, her face went pale and her mouth fell open in shock. At first, she tried to deny everything, but when pressed, she confessed to squandering her husband's life insurance money and borrowing more once it ran out. Spencer and I proceeded with our plan. "I can't have someone with debt living with us," I said. "You need to leave. And since I have evidence of how you've mistreated me, I will be suing you." I played the recording for her. As she listened, her face turned ghostly white, and she begged me to let her stay. I told her she could remain if she adhered to the rules and refrained from aggressive behavior. She eagerly agreed and apologized profusely. "I'm so sorry. Please help me." I never thought I'd see her like this, I thought, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. When I thought the ordeal was finally over, my knees gave way, and I collapsed to the floor. Spencer quickly helped me into a chair and then began to confront Kate about her debts. It was clear that his respect and trust in her had shattered. Kate, who had never imagined facing such a fierce rebuke from her son, frantically apologized. Once everything was settled, she fell silent, staring blankly at the sky for the rest of the day. The atmosphere in our home changed dramatically the next morning. I woke up early as usual and started preparing breakfast. Kate, however, made a cutting remark right away. The difference was in Spencer's response. "Mom, we talked about this yesterday," he said firmly, causing Kate to fall silent and retreat to the sofa. I almost felt a pang of amusement at the sight, but I managed to stay focused on preparing breakfast. Spencer was grappling with guilt for not protecting me and struggling to stand up to his mother. Despite this, I knew he was a kind man, and there must have been reasons for his previous inaction. I couldn't bring myself to hate him for it. He tearfully apologized to me, and from then on, he supported me and kept a closer watch on Kate. Her attitude toward me improved daily. While she still made occasional comments, they lacked malice. I hoped this new dynamic would last. For the first time, I could breathe easily and maintain a healthy mindset. The debt repayment was set at $700 a month. Spencer and I worked together to manage it as Kate was too elderly to work. I took a part-time job to balance work and home life, and Kate took responsibility for taking Scene to and from daycare. She did a good job with this. Spencer took over managing the family finances, which helped improve our situation little by little. No matter how much you love your husband, dealing with a difficult mother-in-law can make you consider divorce. Although I couldn't bring myself to do that, I reflected on how much easier life could have been if I had acted sooner. Still, finding that Io was a turning point that helped me rebuild my family. I was grateful to my friend for her support and encouragement. Without her, I might have faced a mental breakdown. I deeply cherish our friendship. Looking back, I feel a sense of accomplishment for holding my family together through the tough times. Even when I was exhausted and unmotivated, I made sure to fulfill my responsibilities to ensure a decent life for everyone. Though I may never fully forgive Kate, I intend to treat her kindly as my mother-in-law. Years have passed and my son has started preschool. We are nearing the end of paying off the debt and considering a move to a new house. Kate has begun helping me more, and my relationship with Spencer has improved significantly. We're even contemplating having another child. Our family is stable now, and I'm content with our progress. I will continue to do my best for my family, always striving to support and nurture them. If you don't do what I say, we're getting divorced, he threatened, thrusting the papers into my hands. I knew this moment would come sooner or later. Fine. Let's get a divorce, I replied calmly. What? He blurted out. Taken aback. I started filling out the forms right in front of him. All right, I'll fight it, I said, my voice steady. He stared at me in disbelief, as if he hadn't expected me to actually go through with it. You don't understand, he muttered. Without me, you'll be all alone. Sure, I'll be alone, I said, unfazed. Is that all you wanted to say? Because I'm busy packing. Packing? To move out, he stammered. Of course. We're getting divorced, so I'm leaving. The timing couldn't be better. My name is Sarah. A few years ago, I married my husband Jason. We don't have children, and both of us are busy with our careers. My parents passed away in an accident during my first year of work, leaving me to face life on my own. When Jason and I got married, I was so grateful. I longed to build a family with him and dreamed of having 2 children, imagining a bright future together. Reality turned out to be much different. After our wedding, Jason's attitude slowly grew cold. Sarah, if I ever leave, you'll be all alone again, he'd say during even the smallest arguments. He knew my vulnerabilities and used them against me, sparking constant fights. I often complained about my housework, picking at the smallest things. Stir-fried vegetables for dinner? He'd scoff. This is food for old people. Didn't I call you earlier to ask what you wanted for dinner? You said, whatever. Yes, but I still think a good wife should figure out what her husband wants and make it. I was craving pala tonight. Then why didn't you say so? You expect me to just know without asking. No matter what you cook, I'd still have something to complain about. What? What did you just say? I work just as hard as you do, and I'm the only one handling all the housework. Don't start with that. Before we got married, you said you enjoyed doing housework. I do enjoy it, but when you constantly criticize everything I do, it makes me not want to do it anymore. I see. What do you mean by that? Oh, nothing. Just thought you were getting a bit cheeky. Cheeky? If that's what you think, it means you don't respect me. I don't like that about you either. Always overanalyzing. I don't want a wife who talks down to me like this. Here we go again. Next, you'll probably remind me that I'm all alone in the world. And right on cue, Jason added his usual line. Well, maybe having kids will fix that loneliness. Maybe it's time we start a family. Jason always brings this up after every argument. When we first got married, I was eager to start a family right away. But the kind man I had married soon disappeared, replaced by someone who constantly complains. Now the idea of having children with him fills me with hesitation. It's true that Jason is my only family now, but before marrying him, I lived alone and managed just fine. I have enough money to support myself and could go back to that life if needed. Sometimes the thought of returning to solitude seems better than enduring Jason's threats. If we had a child, I fear I would spend my life enduring his abuse, and he would likely direct that abuse at me in front of our child. I can't shake this fear, and it leaves me feeling stuck. Jason doesn't like my reluctance, but he doesn't understand my reasons either. Before we got married, you were eager to have kids right away, so why are you now so hesitant? Isn't this a bit deceitful? If that's the case, why don't you make me feel more comfortable about having kids? Are you going to keep criticizing my cooking, my housework, and the way I fold clothes even in front of them? I'm not criticizing. I'm just expressing my thoughts. That's just how it sounds to you because you're overly sensitive. Maybe your personality was affected by not having parents during your childhood. What are you talking about? Are you trying to make me look foolish? I'm not making a fool out of you, Jason said with a dismissive grin. The look on Jason's face was clear proof that he was making a fool out of me. And to make matters worse, there was my mother-in-law. Any grandchildren yet? She would ask every time I visited her house. That's right. You should ask her about it too. She's not contributing at all, Jason would say. Sarah, what's going on? My mother-in-law's gaze was piercing. I was at a loss for words. Well, there are issues, my mother-in-law said. Jason, you need to discuss this with Sarah. I do talk to her all the time, but this woman. Don't call her this woman. Just make sure you and Sarah work things out, all right? All right, I understand, Jason replied. My mother-in-law is a quiet person. Since her husband passed away, she has been living alone. She means well, but her constant question, any grandchildren yet, weighs heavily on me. I can see how much she's looking forward to becoming a grandmother, so I can't bring myself to tell her that I'm unsure about staying married to her son because of his personality. I had no choice but to keep my concerns to myself. Then my mother-in-law had an accident. I received a call from Jason and left work early to rush to the hospital. I arrived before he did. I'm sorry for the trouble. How is Mother? I'm okay. Just a broken leg, she said with a weak smile. Oh my God. You don't need to cry like that, she reassured me, though I couldn't hold back my tears. I'm sorry. I was terrified I might lose you too. I was so worried on the way here. Oh well, I guess Jason didn't tell you. I'm sorry for making you worry and for reminding you of what happened to your parents. This was the first time my mother-in-law and I had a deep conversation. You should head home now, she said gently. But I want to wait for Jason. I'll go home with him, I replied. She sighed. He's not coming, so you might as well go home. That can't be true, I said, not wanting to believe it. I'm his mother. I know, she said firmly. It was disheartening, and unfortunately, she was right. Jason didn't show up even after visiting hours were over. When I returned home, he was lounging on the couch, watching TV. What are you doing? I asked, puzzled. What do you mean? Jason replied, feigning ignorance. You called me to say your mother had an accident today, so why didn't you come to the hospital? Oh, I figured you'd handle it. One person's enough, right? She's still alive, so it's not a huge deal. She's your only mother, I pointed out. Shut up. Just make me something to eat. I'm starving. You haven't eaten. Of course not. Why should I spend my own money when you're cooking? I'm not cooking. I'm going to bed, I said firmly. Don't you dare talk to me like that. If you make me angry, I'll divorce you, you know, Jason threatened. Then go ahead and do it. I was hungry, but Jason's words and actions had irritated me so much that I decided not to cook for him. I stayed in the bathroom, determined not to give in. The next morning, he was already gone. From that day on, he never came back, presumably staying at his parents' house. I left him there. After work that day, I hurried to the hospital to see my mother-in-law. I chose not to mention Jason. I didn't want to add to her worries. I made it a point to visit her every day while she was in the hospital. "Thank you so much," said Sarah. "I know you and Jason aren't getting along, but I really appreciate you being there for me." "I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize," I replied softly. "I can guess what's been happening. Understand you didn't want to have children, and he must have caused you a lot of distress." I didn't know how to respond to my mother-in-law's insight, so I remained silent. A woman's intuition can be very accurate. He's the one who made you worry about having kids, so it's all right now. I was looking forward to having a grandchild too, and I probably pressured you more than I should have. I'm truly sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't meet your expectations either. As we were talking, the doctor informed us that the treatment would take longer than expected, but she would be discharged soon. Since she lives alone, she'll need assistance until her leg heals. I'm in a position to help, so I arranged to work remotely on a limited basis with my company's approval. When I told my mother-in-law about it, she felt bad that I had to go through this, but I reassured her that it was fine. On the day of her discharge, I picked her up from the hospital and brought her back to her house. The atmosphere was tense, especially with Jason there. He should still be at work at this hour. I was supposed to meet him in the evening. But even though he approached, it felt uncomfortable. My mother-in-law was watching me intently. Actually, Jason and I had a bit of a fight, and he left the house. So today will be the first time we're seeing each other in a while. My mother-in-law looked uneasy. See each other where? This is the only place I can think he might have gone. Her expression grew stern. I understand now. I'm sorry, I said. Why are you apologizing? Jason is your beloved son. I know it must be uncomfortable for you to hear that I've had conflicts with him. No, not at all. He's the type who never bothers to visit me. What? He never came to visit you? No, never. I was shocked. My mother-in-law had been in the hospital for 2 weeks, and he hadn't visited her even once. What, Anne? Well, he's not the sweet boy you might think he is. What do you mean? Sarah, calm down and listen. He doesn't have a key to this place, so he's not here. That means it's fine. I have an idea. Let's discuss what we can do together. Then my mother-in-law surprised me with an unexpected offer. A week later, I found myself back in the house. As I was packing my bags, I heard the front door open. Oh, perfect timing. I wanted to talk to you. I'm busy. How's Mom doing? Why don't you go see her yourself? Ha! You're the one taking care of her, so I don't need to go. Besides, you're supposed to be looking after Mom. If you don't do what I say, we're getting a divorce. He handed me the divorce papers. Had been expecting this sooner or later. All right, then let's get a divorce, I said, filling out the divorce papers right in front of him. Fine, I'll fight for myself, Jason replied, looking taken aback. You don't understand, do you? Without me, you'll be all alone. Yeah, all alone. Is that all you have to say? If so, that's enough. I'm busy preparing to move out. Where are you moving to? What? Isn't it obvious? I'm divorcing you and moving out. The timing is just right. And who will take care of Mom? Don't worry. I'll make sure your mother is taken care of. You're an idiot, you know that. If you stood up for my mom, you'd get your inheritance. When she dies, I'll be the one to inherit everything as her only son. You're not my son anymore. I turned in surprise as my mother-in-law appeared in the doorway. Oh, what are you doing here, Mother? You need nursing care, don't you? I came to help Sarah move out, you idiot. I can manage on my own with these crutches. My real child is Sarah. I don't need someone who's just after my inheritance while I'm still alive. You won't get a thing. I'm divorcing her. That means she won't be entitled to any inheritance. I'm in the process of adopting a child. What? I'm also in the process of making sure you're disqualified from inheriting anything. You won't get a penny of my money. Oh, that's why I wanted kids. I thought if I had children, they'd be entitled to the inheritance. That's why I pushed for having kids as soon as possible. You're hopeless. You're more of an idiot than anyone could imagine. If you have a child, I'll make sure that child is disqualified from inheriting as well. You old. Jason tried to grab my mother-in-law, but I quickly intervened, pushing him aside and taking her by the hand as we left the house. Hey, are you his wife? A strange woman stood in front of our house. Oh, it's you. You're the one he's been having an affair with. What? Well, for now. Did you sign the divorce papers? Please get out of this house as soon as possible. I see. So Jason had dragged this woman into his scheme. I was taken aback by her sudden appearance, but felt no sympathy for Jason's affair. Instead, I was relieved to know I could secure alimony. When Jason showed up, he flinched at the sight of me with his girlfriend. You're the one who made her wait here. So you were having an affair, huh? Thanks for the confirmation. I'll be sure to get my alimony. Jason stood there, dumbfounded as my mother-in-law and I got into the car and drove away. We went straight to the city office and filed the divorce papers. I then pursued alimony from both Jason and his girlfriend. Despite their excuses, their affair was easily exposed through the girlfriend's social media. They transferred large sums of money to me. It turned out the girlfriend was after my mother-in-law's inheritance, and she vanished from Jason's life once she realized he wouldn't inherit anything. It was clear they were both motivated by money. Jason made several attempts to reconcile by visiting my parents-in-law's house, but his mother refused to see him. I blocked his contact information early on, and though he called from unknown numbers a few times, I didn't answer. Since then, my mother-in-law's leg has fully recovered, and she's thriving with no lingering effects. I'm deeply grateful to her for suggesting that I move on. Now, several years later, I'm still enjoying life with my mother-in-law. I'm no longer alone. We've formed a close-knit family, bound not by blood, but by the care we share. I plan to continue living my life with her, as she is like a mother to me. It's unforgivable to take your spouse for granted and treat them poorly. Jason's reasons for wanting children were selfish and misguided, and he will never find happiness. I hope Sarah and her mother find happiness in the future. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one. My husband suddenly starts ranting about how he refuses to be the breadwinner for a housewife, spouting things that make no sense. Before I know it, he's packing up my belongings. What are you doing? I ask, bewildered. I'm asking you to leave this house until you realize what you've done. He replies coldly. What? I can barely process his words. My name is Mary, a 27-year-old office worker. I recently landed my dream job at a cosmetics company and threw myself into my work with enthusiasm. My dedication paid off. I received excellent feedback from my boss and earned a promotion. For someone my age, my salary is pretty impressive. I've been married to my husband Tom for a year. We're the same age, but he earns less than I do. It doesn't bother me, but I've come to realize that it's a sensitive issue for him. Tom never brings it up directly, but whenever our conversations drift towards work, he quickly changes the subject. I think it reminds him that his salary is lower than mine. He often seems unmotivated about his job, saying, "I don't have a great job, so I've learned to avoid talking about my work too much at home." Despite this, Tom does his share of the housework and is great at cooking and cleaning. He has a gentle nature and we communicate well, so I've always felt that we're a strong couple. But now I'm beginning to wonder if I was the only one who felt that way. One day, I wasn't feeling well and experienced severe nausea. Concerned, I went to the hospital and found out I was pregnant. Excited, I immediately shared the news with my husband. He was overjoyed, and seeing his happiness made me even more thrilled. I thought to myself, we're going to build a loving, warm family. Decided to take maternity leave about 6 weeks before my due date, wanting to give myself time to rest since it was my first pregnancy. However, around that time, I noticed a subtle change in my husband's attitude. When he came home one evening, I greeted him with a smile. "Welcome home." He looked at me lounging on the sofa and remarked, "Relaxing on the sofa again, huh? You've got it easy." His tone surprised me. At first, I brushed it off, assuming he was just stressed from work. But as the days passed, his attitude toward me grew colder and more distant. "Hey, where's my dinner? Sorry, I'm not feeling well today, so I picked up some pre-made food from the supermarket." "What? You've got to be kidding me. After a long day at work, you're serving me supermarket pre-made food." His sudden outburst caught me off guard, and I was too exhausted to argue. Some days I felt so sick that I could barely do anything. Even the smell of food made me nauseous. On one of those days, I sent my husband a message explaining how I was feeling and asked if he could either cook for himself or grab something to eat. He didn't respond, but I saw that he'd read the message, so I assumed everything was fine. I crawled into bed and fell asleep for a few hours. When I woke up, it was midnight. I got up to go to the bathroom and noticed the light was on in the living room, with voices drifting from inside. Curious, I walked in and was surprised to find that my husband had brought some of his colleagues home with him. "Oh, look, the selfish princess has finally woken up," one of his colleagues said with a smirk. Another added, "Sorry to disturb you." I greeted them politely, but I was shocked. I quickly pulled my husband aside into the hallway. "What's going on? Why would you bring people over this late?" He shrugged. "What's the big deal? We went out for drinks, and when that wasn't enough, I invited them back here. You know I'm pregnant, right?" I said, trying to keep my frustration in check. "So what? I'm not asking you to do anything risky. But could you please consider the impact this is having on my mental health?" "What? You're overreacting. If you had cooked dinner, I wouldn't have needed to go out for drinks with them. So you're the one responsible for me bringing them home." His reasoning made no sense to me. "If you have so much energy, why don't you make something to eat and serve it to everyone?" "I can't, I'm still feeling sick." "You're just being selfish. You're ruining the fun for everyone. Go back to your bedroom and get some rest." With that, he turned and went back into the living room. I couldn't take it anymore. Frustrated, I decided to move back to my parents' house. I explained the situation to my obstetrician and asked if I could give birth near them. Fortunately, she knew an obstetrician close to my parents' place and promptly provided me with a letter of introduction. I left a note on the table saying, "I'm going home for a while to give birth." My husband immediately started calling and messaging, but I chose to ignore him. About a week later, I received a message from him saying, "I'm sorry. You can stay at your parents' house and rest before the birth." Although I still hadn't forgiven him, I was relieved to hear his apology. I stayed at my parents' house and it made a huge difference. I felt much better. My nausea subsided and my appetite returned. After that, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. My parents were thrilled to welcome their granddaughter, and my husband came to the hospital as well. He was overjoyed to hold our daughter, exclaiming, "She's so cute," and showed genuine concern for my health. I felt relieved, thinking that he had returned to his caring and gentle self. Once I recovered, I spent about 2 weeks at my parents' house before moving back to the home I shared with my husband. When I returned, he eagerly took on the task of feeding our daughter after work. Initially, he was very involved, helping with diaper changes and bath times. His enthusiasm and support were incredibly encouraging. I felt relieved, believing that my husband and I would be able to live together harmoniously once more. However, about 2 months after our daughter was born, his attitude began to shift again. It seemed to be related to our baby's increased nighttime crying. Until then, she had been sleeping soundly, but now her cries were frequent and disruptive, waking us up regularly throughout the night. The lack of sleep began to take a toll on my husband, who became increasingly stressed and less supportive with childcare. He even said, "I'll sleep on the couch," and left me to handle everything on my own. Additionally, he started coming home late from work, which only deepened my mistrust and concern about our relationship. Once I saw him acting this way, I began to notice many other things about him. I started expressing my frustration about his lack of involvement in raising our child. My husband appeared increasingly stressed, and one day he made a startling comment. "Who do you think is providing for you?" "What?" I asked, confused. "It's because of me that you're able to stay home and live comfortably. You should show more respect for your husband." I was taken aback. "I appreciate that you were supportive in the beginning. But lately, when our daughter cries, you just brush it off and say, 'Hey, she's crying,' without offering any help." "No, that's not what I'm talking about," he snapped. "What do you mean by silly?" I asked, puzzled. "I'm the boss in this house and you're showing me disrespect." "I don't understand what you're referring to," I said, genuinely confused. "I'm the one who earns the money, so you need to show me more respect." He then began to say things that didn't make sense, like, "I'm not going to be the breadwinner for a housewife." Without warning, he started packing up my belongings. "What are you doing?" I asked, bewildered. "I'm asking you to leave this house until you regret what you've done," he said as he hastily stuffed my clothes into a bag and tried to force me out. "Fine, I'll go. Just let me pack my things myself," I responded, starting to fold my clothes and place them in my bag. Once I was done packing, I picked up my daughter and saw him throw my box out the front door. "Come back when you've had time to reflect on your actions," he said, and then he locked the front door behind him. Left with no other option, I returned to my parents' house. After leaving my daughter in my mother's care, I went to the city office to pick up the divorce papers. The next day, I went back to my husband's house and rang the doorbell. "Oh, you're back already? I suppose you've realized you can't manage without me. All I need is for you to show me you're sorry. If you get down on your knees, I might forgive you," my husband said with a smirk. Ignoring his demands, I pulled the divorce papers from my bag and handed them to him. "What? Divorce papers? Why? I thought you were sorry," he exclaimed, confused. "After everything you've said and done, I have nothing to apologize for. I haven't done anything wrong. I can't stay married to you any longer," I replied firmly. My husband was clearly taken aback, not expecting me to follow through with the divorce. He then said something that made little sense. "But you're okay with this? It's going to be tough for you as a single mother. You don't even have a job. How will you support your daughter?" "What are you talking about?" "I didn't lose my job," I replied. "What? You've been home all this time? I thought you quit because you got pregnant." "Oh, so that's what you've assumed." "Who said I quit my job? I'm just on maternity and childcare leave." "What?" It seemed my husband believed that women automatically quit their jobs after giving birth. "Oh no, I thought you had become a stay-at-home wife," he said, realizing his misunderstanding. "Oh, I see. So you thought you could one-up me," I said. My husband's face went pale with shock. It was clear he was deeply hurt. He had always been proud, and when we were both working, my higher income seemed to bother him. I guess he just assumed I had quit my job rather than being on leave. I was thoroughly disgusted by his behavior. Husbands and wives should be equal, I told him. I'm exhausted from dealing with your inferiority complex. I never cared about who made more money. Realizing the gravity of his actions, my husband broke down in tears and pleaded, "I'm sorry. Please don't divorce me." But by then it was too late. I asked him to sign the divorce papers and left the house. We later finalized the divorce through our lawyers. I have recorded my ex-husband's verbal abuse as a precaution, so I was able to use it as evidence to secure alimony for the harassment I endured. Without my income, he couldn't afford the rent on our apartment, so he had to move to a cheaper place. Interestingly, when he brought his colleagues over that night, they had no idea I was pregnant. When they saw my belly, they were all taken aback. After our divorce, rumors spread at his workplace that he'd been dumped by his wife. My ex-husband must be feeling a lot of shame now, and he totally deserves it. Meanwhile, I took maternity leave and returned to work, now living at my parents' house. They've been incredibly supportive as I balance work and raising my child. Although my marriage didn't work out, I'm happier than ever thanks to the fulfilling work I love and the joy on my daughter's face. I'm committed to my career and excited to watch my daughter grow up. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.
I bought a high-rise condo across from the station, but suddenly he brought up this story. Why now? It was surprising because he had purchased the condo behind my back while I was staying at my parents' house. It's an amazing place with a stunning view and spotless rooms, but I was in shock. He moved out of our apartment and into this luxurious condo without any explanation or apology, saying he used money from selling our old place. He told me, "I'm going to live with mom and dad in this great house, so I don't need a parasite like you." It was outrageous. He decided to live with his parents without consulting me and kicked me out. I was speechless, not knowing where to begin. My name is Sarah. I'm a 32-year-old housewife, 8 months pregnant, eagerly counting down the days until I meet my baby. My husband, Richard, is 35 and works for a major company. We've been married for 3 years, and I was thrilled to finally be pregnant after struggling to conceive. However, I was also terrified of childbirth. To ease my anxiety, I spent time at my in-laws' home. "Sarah, you're about to have a baby soon, huh? What's it like to become a mother?" Jane, Richard's brother's wife, asked me. Jane is the reason I visit my in-laws. She's a housewife and lives with them, and I've grown close to her. My mother-in-law had trouble with her legs 2 years ago, and Jane, who has caregiving experience, agreed to help. She's quite capable but is always there to assist. Her kindness impressed me, and as a more experienced mother, she helped ease my worries about childbirth. Now, with only a month left until my due date, I plan to stay at my parents' house to prepare for the birth. Although my belly felt heavy, I enjoyed shopping for the baby and imagining our new life. Spending time at my parents' home felt refreshing after a long while. 2 days past my due date, contractions started, and I tried reaching Richard, but he didn't answer. I was concerned he might be busy or in trouble. As my labor pains intensified, I focused solely on giving birth. Eventually, I welcomed a beautiful baby girl into the world. I cradled my beautiful baby girl for the first time, overwhelmed with happiness. Richard was supposed to be there for the birth, but he didn't show up at the hospital. I was too exhausted from labor to confront him directly, so I simply texted him to let him know I had given birth and then fell asleep. When I woke up, I heard someone calling my name. "Are you still asleep?" Richard's voice was grating. I blinked open my eyes to find him standing by my bed, with his parents in tow. He greeted me cheerfully. "My parents came. You have to appreciate them." I had specifically asked not to have visitors immediately after giving birth, so I was taken aback that he had brought his parents along without asking me. Irritated, I asked, "Why didn't you come yesterday?" He responded casually, "I promised to go eat sushi with my parents." I thought I'd come after that, but I drank a lot and figured it would be better not to come and be a trouble. I couldn't believe his priorities. While he enjoyed sushi and drinks, I was left to struggle through childbirth alone. Ignoring my irritation, he asked, "Where's our baby?" "She's in the nursery, a healthy baby girl," I replied. My mother-in-law's face tightened at the news. "What a girl," she muttered. "Such a useless wife." I was stunned by her comment. My father-in-law chimed in. Both Jane and Sarah blew it. "You're pathetic." I was hurt and furious that, instead of receiving gratitude for enduring childbirth, I was insulted. Richard, too, seemed disappointed. "Oh, damn it. I knew it was a girl, but I hoped for a boy." I got my hopes up. I didn't understand his disappointment. He explained that his parents had high hopes for a boy since our first child was a girl, but that didn't matter to me. To me, my baby was perfect, no matter her gender. Richard's reaction left me feeling alone and unsupported. as he seemed more aligned with his parents' expectations than with celebrating our new arrival. I was fuming with anger, but exhaustion and soreness from childbirth made it hard to muster the energy to confront Richard. Thankfully, a nurse who had overheard our conversation through the wall intervened and asked his parents to leave the room. She noticed my distress and offered me comfort as I cried. Since then, Richard hadn't visited me in the hospital. On the day of my discharge, I arranged for my parents to pick us up and take us to their home. I didn't want to return to our place in such a state. I couldn't understand why Richard had become so cold-hearted. He seemed so much more caring when we first married. I wondered if his change in demeanor was linked to his work issues from 2 years ago. He had made a significant mistake that caused a huge loss for his company. Though his colleagues covered for him, he never faced any real consequences. Still, the error derailed his career, and he had struggled to get back on track. His frustration and stress may have contributed to his emotional distance. Additionally, one of his colleagues, who had joined the company later, was now his boss. Richard had been better at his job initially, but their roles reversed due to his earlier mistake. The reversal must have been hard for him to accept, adding to his stress and affecting his behavior at home. I felt a mix of dissatisfaction and hope that having our baby would spark some change in him, but he didn't seem to be making any effort. I worried about our family's future and felt overwhelmed by the uncertainty. Then Richard called me unexpectedly. "Hey, when are you coming back? You've been gone for almost a month since the baby was born." I wasn't ready to go back yet. "Sorry, I'll be home soon. I need to get things in order for our daughter and start fresh." Richard's response was shocking. "You don't need to bring all that stuff back. I actually just wanted to discuss something with you. Maybe I should have told you this in person rather than over the phone." I was stunned and confused by his abruptness. What did he mean? I was completely baffled by what Richard was saying. Then he dropped an even more shocking revelation. "I bought a high-rise condo across from the station." I was stunned. "Wait, what do you mean?" I asked, trying to make sense of his sudden announcement. Why was he bringing this up now? He described the condo's stunning view and immaculate rooms, but I was confused. He had moved out of our apartment and into this luxury condo without telling me while I was staying at my parents' house. I was flabbergasted. Where did the money come from? You shouldn't be able to afford that on your salary. He made no apologies and simply said, "I used the money from selling our house." I needed clearer explanations, not just bits of information. "You sold our house. Where are your parents living now?" He seemed oddly pleased as he replied, "Daddy and Mommy are living with me in the condo now. I'm moving in with them, so I don't need a parasite like you. Get out." I was left speechless, unsure how to react. Richard had decided to live with his parents without consulting me and had kicked me out. He called his parents Daddy and Mommy with a new sense of familiarity and announced they were living together in the condo. He practically asked for a divorce. As I stood there, dumbfounded, he continued, "You're so arrogant for a housewife. You're useless without my salary. You've got a dead weight lately, especially with your morning sickness." I tried to explain that I had been busy right up until giving birth, but he wouldn't listen. He added, "And our baby isn't a boy. My parents think it's better to be with a younger woman who might give them a boy. They also don't want to live with you and my brother anymore." He told me he had put my things in a storage room and instructed me to pick them up. "As for the divorce, I've already sent you the papers. Make sure to file them." And with that, he hung up on me. I was stunned and paralyzed by the shock. How had I ended up married to someone so callous? I felt like I had made a terrible mistake, but there was no point in dwelling on it now. My priority was my daughter. I had to pull myself together for her sake. After taking some time to process everything, I resolved to sever all ties with Richard and begin a new chapter in my life. I was determined not to let him control me any longer. If a divorce was what it took, then so be it. I would show him who would truly regret this decision. My parents were furious when I told them about the situation. They immediately agreed to support me through the divorce. As soon as I received the divorce papers from Richard, I signed and filed them. About 2 weeks later, Richard unexpectedly showed up at my parents' house. "Hey, what's going on?" he demanded. "Why has so much money been withdrawn from my bank account?" He slammed his bank statements onto the table, glaring at me. I remained calm and replied, "Aren't you familiar with the term division of property?" "What's that supposed to mean?" he retorted, baffled. "That's not what this is." "The account in question is mine," I said firmly. "I'm not giving you a cent." I had previously deposited some money into your account, but it was shared property. I'm taking back what's rightfully mine." He was infuriated. "Why should I give you my money? You've forgotten that your salary went down because of your mistake at work. I started a side job at home. I'm sure you didn't earn as much as I did." "Actually, I earned as much as you did," I countered, "and you're the one who wanted the divorce. This conversation is over." Richard was incredulous. "You've got to be kidding me. I don't believe this." My father, who had been silent until then, finally spoke up. "How about we take this to court?" "How dare you insult my daughter?" I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for my daughter, who had endured so much because of Richard. "Get out of here, you bastard," I shouted. My father, a policeman, intimidated by Richard's menacing demeanor, made him flee from our house. That was the final end to our relationship, and the asset division issues were resolved. Since then, I've been focusing on raising my daughter at my parents' house. Adjusting to parenting has been a challenge, but she is an absolute joy. My life has taken on a new, happier rhythm with my adorable baby girl. A few months later, I started receiving persistent calls from an unknown number. Though I had ignored them initially, I decided to answer, thinking it might be my boss or colleagues. "Hello," I answered. "Hello, Sarah." It was Richard. "What do you want?" I asked sharply. "How are you doing?" he asked. "I don't really want to discuss that." "Can I hang up now?" "Wait, can you come back? I'm having trouble paying the mortgage on the condo. I might get kicked out." I wasn't surprised. "You're short on cash, aren't you?" "Yeah, I've used up all my savings. Daddy hurt his back and had to quit his job. Mommy brags about her life, but now she's always sick. I'm at my wit's end." I wasn't shocked by his predicament. With his salary, he likely couldn't manage the condo's mortgage. He must have relied on his savings, his father's salary, and a down payment. Now that his father couldn't work and his mother spent extravagantly, he was struggling to cover their expenses. It was no wonder he was in trouble. When I checked my bank balance, it was at zero. I was informed that if I didn't pay by next week, I would be evicted. "Please come back, Sarah. We used to care about each other." I laughed, finding his pleas almost amusing. "Give me a break. You just want to exploit me whenever you need something. You expect me to support you and act as your housekeeper." Richard fell silent, and I remembered how he had called me a parasite. Wouldn't I just be in the way? I retorted, recalling the hurtful words he had used before. I had something weighing on my mind. "What about Jane and your brother?" "They've already moved out and are living together now," he said. "He had a falling out with our parents when my brother told Dad to live more appropriately. My brother lost his temper and said, 'I don't want to be told what to do by someone who's dependent on a woman who couldn't even give him a son.' Usually calm, my brother blew up. He left the house saying, 'I'll cut you off if you keep making fun of my wife.'" "I see. It sounds like he's a decent person. It's good to know he cares about Jane," I responded. "Please come back, Sarah." "Are you serious? Who would ever return to you? I'm fully occupied with taking care of my daughter. I can't deal with jerks like you. By the way, calling your parents daddy and mommy at your age is pathetic," I added. "Don't say stuff like that. You can take our daughter here if you want. Weren't you supposed to live with our daughter when you first asked me?" "Oh, I see. You don't even remember. You had your daughter, didn't you? I would never take her to a father like you. Don't ever call me again. If you show up again, I'll call the police and my dad will make sure you get arrested." He made a pathetic sound, clearly recalling my dad's intimidating presence. I hung up and blocked him. Later, he tried calling me from a new number, but I had changed mine too. A bit later, Jane contacted me. "I'm sorry for not reaching out sooner. We moved to the countryside, and it took us a while to get internet access set up." Jane and her family had decided to live in a peaceful, rural setting. I visited their new home and found it to be a charming town surrounded by nature. I imagined how happy and well-adjusted my child would be growing up in such an environment. Jane's husband filled me in on my ex. He and his family were eventually evicted from their high-rise condo and burdened with debt. He was struggling to support his parents and barely making ends meet. In contrast, I was thriving. I worked from home and lived comfortably at my parents' house. Today, I was going to relax at Jane's place for a few days before returning to spend more time with my daughter. Once my daughter was a bit older, I hoped we could move to the area and live near Jane. With that bright future in mind, I happily enjoyed my time. Buying a high-rise condo while your wife is pregnant is insane. Maybe if you're rich, but it's ridiculous on a normal income. I thought. I was relieved to have left such an unlikable husband behind. I wished Jane and her family all the best, hoping they would continue to live harmoniously together. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.
Hi there, I'm Tara, and I've come to share a story that's still fresh in my mind from a few months back. I want to shed light on toxic behavior and the importance of standing up against it. At 32 years old, I live with my husband Stephen, who's also 32, and our kitten. Stephen and I have been together since high school, and despite attending colleges in different states, our bond remains strong. We're about to celebrate our 15th anniversary as a couple, but unfortunately, my mother-in-law Lily won't be joining us. Lily has never approved of me. She's always favored her two sons, Stephen and his older brother Sean, showering them with attention since birth. They adored her so much that they failed to recognize her controlling and manipulative nature as they grew older. Lily's stringent rules became suffocating for her teenage sons. They weren't allowed to date, socialize, or even have sleepovers. Sean rebelled against her restrictions, often getting into trouble. Despite his defiance, he stood up for his now wife Jessie when Lily attempted to intimidate her. As Stephen and Sean distanced themselves from Lily upon turning 18, her focus shifted to me. She went to great lengths to sabotage our relationship, even planning a trip to Hawaii during prom week to keep us apart. Although Stephen pleaded with her to cancel the trip, he rarely challenged her authority. During our college acceptances, Stephen and I briefly separated, during which Lily celebrated and encouraged Stephen to move on. Despite her efforts, Stephen eventually reunited with me, much to Lily's dismay. She resorted to harassing and humiliating me at every opportunity. Lily's behavior serves as a reminder of the importance of recognizing and combating toxicity in relationships. It's crucial to stand up against such behavior to protect oneself and those we care about. I attempted to have a conversation with Stephen about Lily's behavior, but it didn't go as planned. Stephen, your mother's treatment of me is very disrespectful. I've always tried to be friendly and welcoming towards her, but all she does is berate me and call me names. I'm getting tired of her behavior. You need to do something about it, I expressed. Tara, you know my mother's a little sensitive with what happened with Sean. She's afraid to lose me as well. She only means well for me and my future. You shouldn't take her words to heart, Stephen replied. So you're okay with how Lily treats me? Seriously, Steve, you remember she tried to break us up, right? I questioned. She only did that because she thought you would cheat. If you had cheated on me, I would have been heartbroken. She wanted to help me escape a bad heartbreak, Stephen justified. Are you serious? She played on your insecurities to end our relationship. How can you justify that? I retorted. No matter what I said, Stephen never agreed with my perspective. He always thought I was overreacting and that Lily was only looking out for him. He outright refused to believe me when I said that Lily called me to berate me. He always said that Lily could do no such thing and that I was falsely accusing her of being mean. Even Sean tried to talk some sense into him, but after knowing everything, Stephen fought with Sean and accused him of betraying their mom. Things became strained between Sean and Stephen. Sean ended up marrying Jessica, his high school girlfriend whom Lily had tried to scare off. He invited Sean and me to the wedding but refused to even tell Lily about it. Lily was in hysterics and tried to convince Stephen to talk to Sean and get herself invited. Stephen, being the mama's boy he is, argued with Sean about Lily. Stephen almost didn't go to the wedding to support Lily. However, I asked him, do you really want to boycott the wedding to support Lily? Considering what she did to Sean and Jessie in high school, she still complains about Jessie and insists that she took Sean away from her. Why should they invite her to their wedding? Music. He responded, look, you didn't know the whole story. It was a big misunderstanding. She was trying to do what she thought was best for Sean. Moms can get carried away sometimes, but she's ready to mend bridges. We're family, and we shouldn't hold grudges against each other. I countered, it's their wedding and they can choose who to invite. It's not your place to make those requests. We need to respect their decision. I know I can't do much, which is why I'm not attending the wedding. I want them to know that they are making a mistake. I'm going to RSVP tomorrow, and they will have plenty of time to change their minds. I warned him, Stephen, if you don't go to their wedding, they might cut you out as well. They've already done that to Lily. Are you sure you want to lose your brother over this issue? After a lot of back and forth, he finally agreed to attend the wedding. I was happy, thinking things might start to change. He witnessed how happy Cian and Jesse were without Lily's interference. They moved far away and organized the wedding to prevent Lily from showing up. Lily went ballistic when Stephen showed her the pictures, crying on his shoulders and making him stay with her for a month. Stephen even canceled our Colorado trip to make it up to her. I was heartbroken by how he handled the situation. However, I knew that we loved each other deeply, and breaking up wasn't an option anymore. All I hoped for was that Stephen would see the light and come to his senses about Lily's horrific behavior. Fast forward to 2 years ago, Stephen finally proposed to me, and I said yes. Lily was upset but put on a happy face for him. Later, I discovered that Lily refused to give Stephen her engagement ring because she was convinced I was a gold digger and that our marriage wouldn't last. I must admit, I adore the ring Stephen picked out for me. As engineers, we both earn well, and he was more than capable of buying the ring himself. Plus, I'd much rather wear something he chose than any of Lily's jewelry. Wedding planning turned into a disaster. Lily inserted herself everywhere she could, from cake tasting to venue searching. She detested my ideas and even attempted to change the theme. She called my vintage theme boring and tacky, and though I tried to ignore her, my then fiancé Stephen took her criticisms to heart. Stephen and I meticulously considered every decision we made. I finally had to put my foot down and talk to him about it. This is getting ridiculous. We're the ones getting married. Your mom needs to give us space to decide on our own. I don't need her input on everything. She dislikes everything I choose. You need to tell her to back off. I insisted. Tara, Mom just wants the best for us. She's been to more weddings than us, and I'm sure her input will be valuable to us in the future. You know she couldn't attend Cian's wedding. She just wants to enjoy mine, Stephen reasoned. I'm tired of hearing that excuse. She deserved to be uninvited from Cian's wedding. That was all her fault just because Jesse didn't allow her to interfere. I will not include her in everything. She's welcome to come along, but saying mean things about my choices is unacceptable. This is our wedding, Stephen. She already had hers, I argued. After much coaxing and begging, Stephen finally decided to tell Lily to back off. She threw a fit but toned it down a little. Sadly, Stephen prioritized her choices and changed many things. Initially, I felt pretty sad, but I also knew it was Stephen's day, so I went along in a few places to avoid more trouble. I hadn't yet developed a strong backbone, and Stephen was too engulfed in the fog to think clearly. The wedding turned into another disaster when Lily showed up in a white dress that was so sparkly and lacy, everyone could see it was a bridal gown. Thankfully, Stephen realized the problem with her dress and insisted she change before the ceremony. She tried to play dumb and claimed she didn't have another dress. At that point, my maid of honor and best friend produced a pale blue gown that fit Lily perfectly. Knowing she was planning to wear white, I went shopping and bought her a decent dress out of my own pocket. Lily was out of excuses and had to wear the dress. During the reception, she made tearful speeches about losing her babies to awful women, targeting both me and Jess because they were avoiding her. Lily also disparaged our relationship and tried to portray herself as the poor mother-in-law. The wedding guests looked awkward, and even her family was mortified. My maid of honor promptly took the microphone away and started to lighten the mood. During our honeymoon, Lily called us continuously, crying about feeling lonely. At one point, she was calling us 6 times a day. When she couldn't reach Stephen, she called me, accusing me of keeping him away from her. She insisted that no matter what I did, Stephen would always choose her over me. I reminded her that we were on our honeymoon and that she needed to stop calling us so frequently. When Stephen's phone died, he went back to our room to charge it. There was no reason for me to keep him away from her. I know how greedy you are, Tara. All you want is his money. You cannot accept it. He sends me money every month and brings me gifts. You want to isolate him so that you can take all this money. I won't let that happen. He has been taking care of me since his father died 10 years ago, Lily accused. Lily, I don't care if he looks after you. You are his mother, so it's natural he will send you money. I earn pretty well for both of us, so I don't want his money anyways. You need to stop accusing me of such things, I responded firmly. Shut up, girl. You can fool him, but I know what type of woman you are. Now hand over the phone to my baby immediately. I need to talk to him right now, Lily demanded. This was just one of the many conversations I had with her throughout the honeymoon. We returned home and had to deal with her crying for days because we didn't take her on our honeymoon. Imagine my surprise when she scolded my husband for going without her. Anyway, as usual, Stephen did everything to console his mother and ignore my problems. I was slowly learning to put up with her tantrums and speak out for myself. Everything was going more or less okay until a few months ago when I found out that I was pregnant with our first child. We were both ecstatic, and Steve wanted to tell Lily immediately. I was a little uneasy about it, but decided to let it go. I was sure she would be happy for her first grandbaby. Boy, was I wrong. The moment she knew, the waterworks and screaming started. She said I was baby trapping him and taking him away from her. It was all part of my grand scheme. She's sure I cheated on Stephen and was passing off the baby as his. My husband did his best to calm her down, but she refused to listen to him. By this point, I grew increasingly weary of Lily's antics. Her tantrums persisted for 2 weeks before she decided to pay us a visit. She arrived early in the morning and let herself in with a spare key. Lily seemed overly joyous about our baby and even attempted to shower me with gifts. Stephen was elated, believing Lily had finally accepted the baby. However, the reality was far from that. I felt uneasy about her newfound happiness and opted to remain cautious. Later that evening, Lily offered to make us some tea, claiming it would help warm me up since it was getting chilly outside. Stephen was sincerely grateful for her kindness, giving me an "I told you so" look. Deciding to investigate, I excused myself and went to check on Lily in the kitchen. I observed her making tea and adding something from a carton. Both my husband and I are lactose intolerant, so we only use a specific brand of oat milk for our tea. The carton Lily used was not the one we normally use. While she used the oat milk for 1 cup, she poured from the suspicious carton into the other. Initially, I brushed it off, assuming she was simply using another type of vegan milk for variety. However, I remained uneasy when she placed the suspicious mug in front of me. In an impulsive move, I discreetly switched my husband's cup with mine when they weren't looking. We drank our tea, and the entire time, Lily smirked at me from across the couch. Thankfully, nothing happened for the rest of the night. However, in the early hours of dawn, I heard my husband throwing up in the bathroom. He made several trips, and the noise woke me up. After a while, I saw him lying on the couch in the living room, clearly in pain. When I approached him, Lily emerged from her room, looking concerned. Upon seeing Stephen's distress, she began to ugly cry. It was then that I realized she had used cow milk in our tea. I was seething with anger, but first, I had to get Stephen to the hospital. I called 911 and requested an ambulance because Stephen was experiencing intense stomach pain and was on the verge of passing out. At the hospital, we waited for the medication to take effect. When the doctor arrived for a consultation, I took Lily with me and made her confess in front of Stephen and the doctor. She was worried about her son, so making her confess wasn't difficult. The doctor shook his head and informed us that Stephen needed to be hospitalized for a day. After the doctors left, Stephen looked troubled. Suddenly, the fog started to clear in his head, and he was baffled by what Lily had done. He asked her, "Mom, you know I'm allergic to milk. Why did you use it? We don't even keep cow milk in our fridge. Why did you bring it to our house? Even Tara doesn't drink cow milk, and you are well aware of that." Lily responded tearfully, "Stephen, trust me. I didn't want to hurt you. I don't know how this happened. Of course, I know my baby can't have milk. I am your mother." Stephen pressed further. "Then why did you add milk to my tea, Mom? What happened?" Lily continued sobbing in a corner, prompting me to reveal the truth. I know why Lily brought cow milk into our home. You weren't supposed to drink it. It was meant for me. Stephen was shocked. You can't drink cow milk either. I'm sure Mom knows that as well. Why would she bring cow milk for you? I don't understand. I explained, Lily just wanted to hurt me and our baby. I don't know what she wanted to achieve, but she wanted me to suffer. She gave me the cup you drank from. I switched our cups when she wasn't looking because I didn't want to risk the health of our child. Turns out I was right. Stephen was devastated and apologized profusely to me. He vowed to keep Lily away from our lives. I comforted him as best as I could and took him home the next day. I also changed the locks on our house while Stephen was in the hospital. He called Lily and informed her that we were going no contact with her for good, despite her protests and pleas. Stephen firmly stated, Mom, after what you've done, there's no way I want you around. I always stood up for you and defended you. I was too blind to see how much you were hurting my family. I won't allow this anymore. You have crossed the line. Stephen, please, I didn't mean for this to happen. She was taking all your time, and I was feeling lonely. I thought that the baby would make things worse. I simply wanted to hurt her a little and make her suffer. I'm sorry, Lily pleaded. There is no point in saying sorry now. You have done something unforgivable. I cannot even imagine what would have happened if Tara had drunk the tea you gave her. I am disgusted with you and don't want to hear your voice again. Leave us alone, Stephen asserted firmly. With that, we slowly started going no contact with her. She showed up at the house and tried to get in with her keys. When she saw that we changed the lock, she started banging on the door. We simply called the cops and let them deal with her. We also blocked her on all our phones and social media. Sean and Jesse contacted our extended family to inform them about the issue. Everyone was downright disgusted and appalled by her behavior. After discussing her actions with me, Stephen, Sean, and Jesse, we decided to put a restraining order on her. With all the evidence caught on our security camera and her confession to the doctor, the order was granted pretty soon. So far, she has stayed away but has tried to fish for information from our extended family. No one has agreed to entertain her demands. We have also cut off our financial support, so she had to take up a job at Walmart to get by. We are slowly rebuilding our relationship with Sean and Jesse. Stephen and Sean had a heart-to-heart conversation and solved their problems. Jess and I were always good friends, so this just made us even happier. Thankfully, my husband has finally come to his senses and protected me from Lily. We are now pretty happy and eagerly waiting for the birth of our child. To be on the safe side, I reminded my husband that I won't allow Lily to ever have a relationship with our child. To my surprise, he agreed to this condition immediately. We've been enjoying the peace in our household after Lily is gone for good. We might just move to Sean City after our child is born. I am not sure what the future will bring, but I am positive we will get through everything together.